Hi everyone. Um, I wanted to talk to you about the disciplinary reading presentations. So, this is sort of the big unit assignment for the disciplinary reading module. Um, and we're going to be wrapping up this unit, and then I'll just talk to you briefly about what's coming. Um, this week and next week will be sort of the end of your unit, because I want you to spend a week working on this assignment and preparing it and then submitting it at the end of this week. And then I want you to take another week to offer really thoughtful and powerful feedback to your peers. And in order to give that feedback on a presentation that is basically a lesson and assignment, you're going to have to actually act like a student and do the assignment. So I'm breaking this or I'm sort of smooshing the 2 weeks together into one unit. So the planning document that I gave you last week was meant to make this very simple and straightforward. So once we sort of struggled through what does this document mean? How is she using this? What is it for? I hope and I appreciate y'all reaching out to me and offering your insight and asking your questions, because I think that really helped everyone. So please definitely keep that up. But my reasoning for giving you that planning document was so that as you were doing the learning for this unit and the reflecting for this unit, you were thinking about this big picture presentation at the end. So that's what the planning document was meant to do. And what you'll do now to take that planning document and turn it into the presentation that we're doing is you're going to start out by double checking your text. So in terms of length, again, this is not a full unit that you're creating here. This is one assignment that would fall within a unit. So you don't want a super long text that would take your students more than a day to work with. However, if you have a longer text that you want to work with, that you really want to work with, that's fine, but you're going to need to just excerpt it. So you're just going to need to take an excerpt that you would use for this lesson, so that when you give it to us and we are acting as your students, we will have a shorter, more manageable piece to work with. Okay, so think about the length, double check the length, and adjust it if necessary. You also want it to match your purpose. What are you trying to help students learn? And this can be pulled straight from the Common Core standards. This can be something that you've noticed that students maybe don't master as well as you think they should as an expert in your field, in the courses where you've been observing, the classes where you've been noticing what teachers are doing and what students are doing. Maybe you've noticed something that you don't think students are quite getting it the way that they should. And so you want to design a lesson that's really going to target that specific skill or concept or what have you. But you want to make sure that your text suits that purpose. You also want to make sure the text suits your students. Okay, and by this, I know that you're imagining your students. You can either make them up sort of whole cloth just based on your dream ideal school, or you can base them on students that you've seen in your classrooms or you've observed so far. So I know this is somewhat guesswork, but I want to keep in mind you always have to consider your students. I think that was a big sort of theme in last week's reading. And we have to get to know our students. You all have been really powerful with your reflections in terms of how you plan to get to know your students, and that you're already thinking about how important that is. I really appreciate about this group of pre-service teachers. You all are already sort of tapped into how important it is to get to know your students. So that's great. So when I say that you need to make sure that your text will suit your students, I don't mean that it has to be something that they would have picked up out on their own just for fun. It doesn't have to be a topic that will absolutely interest them. But when you think about how the text relates to your students, that's going to help you determine what you're going to have to do to help them connect. If they would already love it, if they would find it funny, if they would find it interesting, whatever the case may be, then you have to take fewer steps in that sort of before we read sort of phase in order to get your students to connect and sort of activate what they already know or what they already think. So I don't mean that you have to censor yourself in order to only pick what your students would be interested in, but think about how they're going to relate to the text, how you're going to help them relate to the text. And these are some points to consider. Okay, what do you want your students to do? What do you want them to do with the text? We need to move beyond saying just read this. Okay? You want them to practice something, to practice a skill, right? You want them to be able to turn it into sort of an automatic way that they read, or you want them to be able to use or apply or do something with what's in this reading. You don't want them to just read it for the pleasure of reading it, which is nothing that I'm against. But for the purpose of this assignment, you want students to do something, to recognize something, to apply in some way what it is that they're reading or what it is that they're learning as they read. And then what are you going to do to help students understand that? So we don't just give out assignments and say, well, too often we do. We should not just give out assignments and say, here, read this chapter. And, there are some discussion questions at the end. Answer those, please. And good luck. Have a great day, right? That's not teaching. So what are you going to do to help students to be able to do what it is you want them to do, if that makes sense? Saying the word do a lot. And what I want you to keep in mind for the purposes of this class, but also because I think it's just a good thing to keep in mind when you're teaching, is what is the literacy at play? So when you look at that text, when you read that text, what is it about your field? What is it about your expertise in that field that makes you able to read that text in the appropriate way, to get something out of it, to understand it, to be able to use it, to be able to do something with the knowledge? What is the disciplinary literacy that helps you experience this text in the way that a musician, a scientist, an artist would interact with this text? Okay, because that's what you want to focus on. Okay, that's how you want your students to read it, the way that you read it as an expert. That's what you want your students to be able to do as well. And what is success? Okay, so when you're thinking about what literacy is at play, you're thinking about what is it that makes me able to experience this the right way, the successful way. Success can mean a number of different things. Okay, so you get to define that, right? As the teacher, you define what it is that a successful reading of this text looks like. All right, so you keep that in mind. It doesn't have to be, our students going to be able to answer a multiple choice question about this topic, right? You are defining what success means. I was reading some interesting stuff that one of you sent me earlier today, and it was about physical literacy. Most of you know that our 620 students in here are going to be teaching PE and health, and so there's some really interesting stuff that they've been sending me that I've been reading about health and physical literacy, and what is physical literacy. And it was just a really interesting concept, because success after reading something like that might not be that, oh, well, I know how to calculate my anaerobic, right? I'm sorry. I know I don't know the terminology, but instead success might like, I recognize that I need to formulate a physical activity plan because I'm not getting enough physical activity, or that I need to keep a diet journal because I need to be aware of what kind of foods I'm taking in. Whatever it is that that health and wellness goal that this text is going to help them get at should be a consideration when you're creating this presentation, this assignment. Okay, so the assignment consists of a couple of parts, right? It's got a presentation, and then it's got some sort of a handout, and then it's going to have some reflection and response to peers. Okay, so that's the whole of the assignment. So the presentation portion is going to be either a video or a narrated slideshow. That's up to you. You're going to introduce the purpose and the topic. Okay, so why are we doing this and what is it kind of about? You're going to provide some context. How you do that, again, is going to depend on what are those gaps between your students and the text, right? So you've already analyzed that. You've already thought about that. This is your bridge. This is how you get them, create a foothold for them into this text. Then you're going to introduce the text itself. So this is what this is. You give them some genre information, some background. You might tell them where you found it. Tell them what era it was from if it's not a current piece. You're going to describe the activity. So you're going to tell them, and this is what you're going to do with it. right? And you're also going to provide, sorry, let me move my head out of the way. You're going to provide a model or an example in that presentation. So that could be you walk them through maybe the first paragraph. You're going to be reading it this way and taking this sort of note or asking this sort of question, and you're gonna show them how to do that. If your text is very brief and providing a model or an example would kind of ruin the whole point of it, then provide a model or an example with a different text, or give it to us just in sort of general form. That's fine as well. You get to decide on that. Okay. So those pieces are all going to be included in the recorded or narrated slideshow presentation. Okay. What am I doing? Sorry, I guess I messed it up when I moved my head. Oh, I was supposed to highlight for emphasis. Apologies. Here we go. Okay. So the handout itself will be the next part. And the handout will be something tangible, okay? So this is something that if we were in person, we could hand it to them. It doesn't necessarily need to be a worksheet, okay? But it sometimes is nice to have a handout to refer back to. It could be background information. It could be a template. You all know how much I love templates, and I give you the sort of reading response template. But basically, whatever approach you take with it, whatever you decide to do with the tangible piece, the handout, you are definitely going to explain the logistics of the assignment. So here's what you're going to do. You'll type it up in a Word document, or you'll create a PowerPoint slide, or whatever it is you want us to do. You're going to explain it. You're going to put it down in writing, sort of formalize what it is you're asking the students to do. And remember that this week we are your students, okay? So the feedback to your peers is going to, let me see. You're gonna do 2 of your peers' assignments. Okay, so you pick whichever peers you want, but try to make sure that everyone gets some feedback. Everyone who has turned in their work should have someone do their assignments. So if you notice someone already has, 3 people who have done their assignment and given them feedback, go on to someone else until you make sure that everybody has at least one peer giving them feedback. Okay. I want you to think like a student. You do not, even if this is your own field, maybe you would be a more passionate student. You would be a student who already loves this subject. That's great. If you're not, you don't have to pretend to be, right? That's the thing about teachers. We're going to have students who love our subjects, and we're going to have students who hate our subjects, right? We have to teach them all at the same time. So that's really fun. And you're going to respond with constructive feedback. Now, there will be particular prompts in the discussion board where I'll sort of urge you to give a certain sort of constructive feedback, but you want to make sure the big thing here is that it's constructive, right? My ideal is that you all will walk away from this course with not only a text set, which is our big HAT assignment, but with a couple of other real and relevant assignments that you can use with your students if you would like to. And keep in mind that this assignment can also be part of your text set, because at the part 1 of the text set is we create this sort of curated list of fantastic texts. But the second part that we'll do is to create some learning activities, some learning experiences that we'll do with those texts. So you can use or adapt what you do here if you like it, and if you get good feedback on it, you can sort of reuse some of this work when we move into the text set part 2. Okay, so that's kind of looking ahead into how this can help us in the future if you take some time now and really make sure that you develop it. And if you as a peer give really thoughtful and useful feedback, then that's going to help everyone have less work to do when we're moving into the last week of the semester and we all just kind of want to go home and have Christmas. Okay, so thank you all. I look forward to seeing what you come up with. Please contact me and let me know if I can help. And I'd love to meet with you in my office hours, or open up some more office hours if you need them. I'm happy to do that. You just let me know, and I will talk to you again soon. So thanks so much. Bye.